The Kardashev Scale was a start. It gave us a frame. Measure a civilization by the energy it captures and controls. Type 1 uses all the energy available on its planet. Type 2 captures the output of its star. Type 3 masters the galaxy. But energy isn't enough. The Nazis built rockets. The fossil fuel industry powers cities while drowning coastlines. A species can burn a planet to ash and still climb Kardashev's ladder. But that's not evolution. That's escalation. So I built a new scale, one that accounts not just for capacity, but for consequence. Not just energy, but wisdom. Not just power, but stewardship. This is the civilizational scale of becoming, and it begins with a single equation. Sovereignty plus systemic power equals responsibility. That's the axis of measure, not how loudly a species can roar, but whether it knows when to listen. Not just what it can build, but whether what it builds amplifies life or erodes it. CSB 0 is where we are now, the extractive epoch. Humanity still runs on combustion, on dead matter pulled from the ground, burned to feed a system designed for endless consumption. Our civilization treats the biosphere like a buffet, not a body. Infrastructure exists to concentrate power, not distribute it. Governance is a patchwork of nation-states locked in eternal crisis management, incapable of aligning around long-term homeostasis. The labor that holds the whole system together is coerced, often in invisible chains. Ecological devastation is dismissed as an externality. Civilizational risk is at its peak, not because we lack power, but because we wield it like a child with a loaded weapon. At CSB 0, entropy always waits just beneath the floorboards. And yet, not all is static. Humanity is near the threshold, what I call CSB 0.8. Renewable energy is emerging. Automated systems are reducing the necessity of human labor. Concepts like universal basic income, cooperative governance, and post-scarcity economics are entering the discourse. But these seeds haven't flowered yet. They fight against systems rooted in entropy and exploitation. Still, the shift is beginning. CSB 1 is what I call the awakening civilization. This is the true beginning of maturity. A species reaches this level not when it can power its grid sustainably, but when it designs its grid with ecological regeneration in mind. Solar, wind, geothermal, fusion, yes, but these are only the tools. The heart of CSB 1 is the redefinition of infrastructure as a life-affirming system. Housing, food, education, healthcare, guaranteed, not as charity, but as design. Scarcity is reframed as an engineering problem, not a philosophical inevitability. At this stage, liberty becomes systemic, not rhetorical. It's no longer something you have to demand or earn. It's built into the structure. Governance shifts from control to mediation. Work becomes optional. Automated logistics, agriculture, and manufacturing manage survival needs. The society orients not around GDP, but around becoming. That's the threshold for true Type 1. That's why Kardashev failed. Energy alone doesn't define worthiness. Liberty does. CSB 2 is the stewardship civilization. It extends the logic of CSB 1 across the stars. Infrastructure expands to multiple planetary bodies, space habitats, and orbital platforms, not for conquest, but for resilience and curiosity. Dyson swarms and space-based solar arrays are built not to feed greed, but to ensure systemic redundancy. Terraforming isn't about domination. It's about resurrection. Dead worlds are revitalized using biomimetic synthesis. Ecosystems are reconstructed, not replaced. At this stage, governance becomes ecological, not in the greenwash sense, but in its literal biospheric logic. Political borders fade. Participation replaces citizenship. And with that shift, something extraordinary happens. Bio-civilizational rights emerge, not just human rights, not just animal rights, but the right of life systems to exist, evolve, and be protected from industrial violation. This is when a civilization becomes a guardian, not of borders, but of biomes. Then at the peak, CSB3, the architect civilization, maturity becomes design with intent. It ceases to be a struggle for control and becomes a living blueprint of integrated purpose. Every system is cultivated for coherence. Every structure reflects a deep understanding of thermodynamics, ecology, and relational ethics. Power is no longer imposed. It is harmonized. The civilization doesn't dominate its galaxy. It aligns with it. Energy is harvested from stars, black holes, and gravity wells, not in brute force, but with ecological elegance. Matter, energy, and information are treated as parts of a self-regulating metabolism. Entropy is no longer a threat. It is a challenge mastered through thermodynamic efficiency, gravitational engineering, and quantum resource cycling. But the most profound shift is cultural. Architecture, transportation, and public space become expressions of civilizational knowledge. Culture becomes a continuous, co-creating force integrated within the very fabric of the systems themselves. Education is lifelong and ambient. Ethics are infrastructural. And becoming is no longer an aspiration. It is the function of every system. Life, in all its forms and substrates, is elevated as the central organizing principle. At CSB3, civilization is no longer defined by control, but by resonance. It uplifts everything it touches. It becomes not a civilization on a world, but a civilization as a world. That is the civilizational scale of becoming. It asks one question, not how powerful we are, but how responsible we are. Not how much energy we control, but whether we deserve to wield it. The great filter isn't energy, it's maturity.